All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mile High County College Football Podcast. It's been a minute, been about a month. We had scheduled the last episode we made was we were previewing conference championships. We made it the day before the conference championships were being played. We said we were going to live stream on that Sunday, reacting to the final college football playoff rankings. But it didn't work that way. We had some problems. We were at our friend's apartment and their TV was broken, so we had to fix it.
About that.
So we didn't really get to do what we had planned. And then after that, school kind of ended and we kind of just took our own breaks and stuff. And now here we are ready to make another episode. So sorry for the not delay, but the break, I guess, unannounced break. But yeah, we're going to get into this. We're just going to review all the bowl games that happened real quick. So we'll start on Friday, December 16th. It was the first day of bowl games. First game we had was this Miami, Ohio versus UAB game. I'm going to try to talk about as much bowl games as I can. JB, you input wherever you want to. I don't know how many you watch, but I tried to watch every single one. But UAB, Miami, Ohio, it was actually a really good game to start off. I mean, two 6-6 teams just kind of battling against each other, different conferences, just having a good time in the Bahamas and stuff like that. It came down to the very last play of the game. Very wild ending, but that's really all I can say about it because I don't know much about either one of those two teams, but it was a good game. And as you see, UAB came out on top 24-20. Jacob, anything?
I didn't watch that game.
You how about you let me know when you watch the game? How about that?
I watched UTSA and Troy.
Okay, UTSA and Troy. We were just talking about this right before we started recording. Two conference champions, both with 2 losses, playing on the first day, both ranked, group of 5 teams. Troy, weird season. We've talked about it before. Had 2 losses. The one loss was to Mississippi in the very first game of the year, not by a lot. And then the other loss was off of the Hail Mary to App State. So, I mean, great season from Troy, honestly. And then UTSA, also a great season. They've kind of been this powerhouse from the Conference USA the past couple of years. Past 2 or 3 years at least, you've seen them go, 2-3 losses every year, win that conference, and be ranked at the end of the year. It was also a good game, not very high scoring from either one of these 2 games, but both good games came down to the last couple minutes. Anything you want to add, Jacob?
Just it wasn't as high scoring as people thought it was going to be. It was 2 good offenses.
And the other crazy thing to note, first quarter only points scored was a safety by UTSA. And the announcers kept saying it. UTSA had a really high-powered offense and Troy had a really good defense. So I remember the announcers kept on saying it like, I want to see how this Troy defense does against this high-powered UTSA offense and stuff like that. And ultimately, that Troy defense did end up winning the game.
Yep.
Then we moved to Saturday, December 16th. This is the first day where there was multiple games besides 2 or 3. We had Florida, Oregon State. Well, no. The first game of the day was Cincinnati, Louisville. I'm pretty sure. Louisville kind of just shut Cincinnati's offense down. Cincinnati with, I think his name's Evan Prater, maybe. It's something Prater, I'm pretty sure. That's their quarterback now. He's young. I think he's a freshman, but he made some really bad plays, really bad throws. He did the same thing in that game against who did they play right there at the end of the season? It was Tulane, right? To go to the American Championship?
Tulane.
Yeah, okay. When they played Tulane, I saw the same things as I saw in this Louisville game. He can get outside the pocket and stuff, but again, he's a freshman. He would just make mistakes, make bad throws, stuff like that, and ultimately it kind of cost him the game a little. That's really all I can say about that one. I think the next game of that day was Florida, Oregon State. It was the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Oregon State dominated.
Florida's bad.
Yeah.
You know how they scored 3 points, right? They scored on a walk-off field goal.
Yeah, and that extended some streak of 400 something games with scoring at least a point.
Yeah, they haven't been shut out in forever. Oregon State, though, they had a great season this year, 10 wins. And then talk about transfers later, but they picked up DJ in the transfer portal.
Yeah, really all I can say on that one. Oh, my fault. I called that one the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. It's the Las Vegas. The Jimmy Kimmel Bowl is the next one I want to talk about, actually. It was Fresno State, Washington State. Interesting game for Fresno State. Another good season for Fresno State. Usually one of those teams out of the Mountain West that we usually see in a bowl game every year. 10-4. I mean, really good. Jake Hayner had a good season. The
NFL
running back
prospect.
Mims, good season. You see here on that game, 18 carries, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. Washington State was interesting because they hung in games with good teams. They played good throughout the year, and they had a really high-powered offense, but they did not have their offensive coordinator in that game, and their offense ultimately just looked lost. They never could get really any momentum going. Cameron Ward's going to go to the NFL. And honestly, no offense to Washington State, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a downfall from them next year.
Fresno State this year, don't quote me on it, but I think they started like 1-4 and then 1 out.
Well, let's see.
I'm pretty sure they.
Yep.
Yeah.
Before they beat Cal Poly, then lost to Oregon State by 3, Southern Cal, UConn, and Boise State, and then won every game after that, including winning the Mountain West Conference Championship against Boise State, 28-16.
Jake Hayner will get drafted this year.
Yeah, I agree. Probably with a back-end quarterback. Then we probably have arguably the best performance in a bowl game this year. When we go to Southern Miss, Rice, Frank Gore Jr. rushing 21 times for 329 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was honestly, this was interesting because you see in the third quarter, Rice put up 21 points. And before that, Rice really looked lost. They didn't look like they knew how to even move the ball on offense, anything like that. And they got a ton of momentum in the third quarter. But it was interesting because after that, Frank Gore just took over. It looked like Frank Gore was actually out there, not Frank Gore Jr. I mean, he was dominant. He was breaking every tackle. He's hitting every hole. And it was like every time he touched the ball, you thought he was going to take it to the end zone. That's all I can really say on that game, though. BYU SMU, I will admit, was a very late game, and it was after all these other games, so I cannot sit here and say I watched every single minute of it. As you see, BYU won by 1 point. SMU made a little bit of a comeback there in the third quarter, scoring 13 points to get within that 1 point. But ultimately, BYU did win that game. Can't really comment on it, though, because I didn't really watch it. And then Boise State, North Texas, a lot closer than I thought it would be. I thought Boise State would kind of not necessarily dominate, but at least take control of the game. But Boise State's in good hands. They've been in good hands for a really long time now. As you see, they're running back at 28 carries, 178 yards, but their quarterback is a true freshman, and he's really good. He's really good. You got any comment on any of these games?
Boise State, like you said, they might be the Cotton Bowl favorite coming into next year. At least I might have them there. They're really good, and they'll stay really good.
Yeah, I agree. Then we'll move to Monday, December 19th, where we had one game, Myrtle Beach Bowl, Marshall versus UConn. Honestly, Marshall was absolutely dominating this game the whole first half. And UConn did bring some momentum there in the third quarter, but Marshall ultimately took control of the rest of the game and did win the game 28-14. It was really, honestly, the story of the game was Marshall's defense. Forcing 3 picks, as you see there. UConn's quarterback was 9 for 27 for 166 and 3 picks. Marshall, just another good group of 5 team. UConn, shout out to them for making a bowl game for the first time in a long time. Well, maybe not a long time, but yeah. Tuesday, December 20th, we had the Idaho Potato Bowl where Eastern Michigan and San Jose State played each other. San Jose State's offense actually looked pretty good, but they just didn't put up a lot of points. Eastern Michigan, interesting team to watch. It was an interesting game to watch, but ultimately not much to comment on. And then same with Toledo Liberty. I actually didn't watch much of this game, but Toledo did pull it out. I think I actually fell asleep watching that game. Can't lie.
Toledo had a good year.
Toledo did have a good year. Liberty, going to be interesting to see what they do next year. Losing Hughes Freeze, but bringing in Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina.
Surprised he took that job.
Me too. Wednesday, December 21st. I cannot comment. The only thing I can say about this game, I was at a UNC versus Michigan basketball game that night, so I did not get to watch any of this game. However, Austin Reed is an absolute monster. It feels like now if you're a quarterback and you go to Western Kentucky, you're going to throw for 400 plus yards a game. Austin Reed was in the transfer portal right before this game and ended up backing out of the transfer portal, I'm pretty sure, and playing in the game. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on
No,
that.
you're right. You're right.
But I remember I picked South Alabama because I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't know what Western Kentucky's offense will do without their quarterback. But yeah, can't really comment on the game though. I didn't get to watch any of it. I did see there was this crazy interception though by a South Alabama player. But that's all I can really say about that.
Another year, Western Kentucky dominates a bowl game.
Yeah. And then the next day, that Thursday, December 22nd, we had Baylor versus Air Force. This was an interesting game because Air Force obviously, runs I think it's wing T, right? No.
Yeah.
Or triple option, one of the two. They always confuse me, but Baylor's not used to that playing in the Big 12. It's usually a bunch of air raid offense or really pound the rock, like heavy run schemes. So I was interested to see how Baylor's defense played against that because Baylor's usually kind of known for their defense. But Air Force did, get it going, and they did end up winning that game 30-15. That's all I can really say about that one.
Baylor
Great.
really disappointed, didn't they?
Yeah. And then Friday, December 23rd, we had Houston and Louisiana Lafayette. Another game I didn't watch. I don't really remember what I was doing, but I did not watch that game. However, I did watch Wake Forest versus Missouri. Wake Forest did have Sam Hartman. He was in the transfer portal, and again, we're going to get to the transfer portal a little later, but obviously he's committed to Notre Dame now. But I'd pick Missouri win because I didn't think Wake Forest would be able to score any points because I didn't know that Sam Hartman was going to play. Fortunate for me, good game, I guess, kind of. Again, I'm more of a person I like to see a shootout than 23-16 or something like that. But yeah, Houston, Louisiana Lafayette though watched it but didn't really watch it at the same time. So I can't really comment on that game. Anything from you, Jacob?
I mean, Wake Forest, like you said, if we're talking about that one, just dominated Missouri. I mean, the scoreboard doesn't really reflect it. I thought Wake Forest was in control the whole time.
BMW, Freightliner, Ford, and many more of the world's leading brands hire Universal Technical.
Dude, are you serious?
That's weird. That was playing earlier, but it wasn't making sound. All right, then we moved to Christmas Eve, where we had one game, Hawaii Bowl, yearly thing. Middle Tennessee State, San Diego State. Again, another game I did not watch. I was just, it's Christmas Eve, so wasn't really paying attention to games. There was a bunch of NFL on that day also, and I was with my friends, and I was watching the Steelers game at the time when this game was on. But Middle Tennessee State wins off a field goal. I think it was about maybe 2 minutes left or something like that, but that's all I can really say about that one. Then we moved to Monday, New Mexico State Bowling Green. This is actually a really good game, surprisingly. I did watch this game. Bowling Green did lose their quarterback in the first half, and it was kind of a dirty play, I cannot lie, by New Mexico State, but New Mexico State did end up winning that game, 24-19. All I can really say about it is, it's New Mexico State Bowling Green. I don't really have much to say about those two teams. Then we moved to Tuesday, December 27th, where we had 4 games. This is kind of where the bowl matchups start to pick up, or the bowl schedule starts to pick up. Had Buffalo, Georgia Southern. I did not watch this game. I was out doing stuff with some friends. I did not watch this game. Buffalo did win 23-21, though. Both of those were two teams that got bowl eligible in the final week of the season also. Just want to put that out there. Memphis, Utah State, another game I did not watch. Didn't really need to by the looks of the score, 38-10. Memphis kind of blew them out. East Carolina, Coastal Carolina is a game that I started to watch and then turned off after about halfway through the third quarter because East Carolina absolutely dominated. Didn't really understand what was going on with Grayson McCall because he was in the transfer portal before he backed out of it, and didn't think he was going to play, but then he ended up playing, which was kind of weird, but he didn't play the whole game. It's very weird on Coastal's behalf. But East Carolina's offense showed that they were dominant. And honestly, East Carolina's offense has been dominant all year. It's just kind of been under the radar. Another one of those American teams that just likes to put up a bunch of points. And East Carolina kind of on the come up a little bit.
A little bit.
And then Wisconsin, Oklahoma State. This is actually a good game. Braylon Allen had a good game. Oklahoma State just, man, they fell off so hard. They fell off.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. And Garrett Rangel kind of has proved himself at this point to not be the quarterback of the future there at Oklahoma State. I know he's a freshman, but he's played really bad in the minutes he's had this year, and it's been some significant minutes. And as you see, I mean, in this bowl game, 14 for 31, 229, and 2 touchdowns just isn't going to get it done, especially not in the Big 12.
Spencer Sanders still hasn't transferred yet officially, so we'll see if he comes back.
And then here was a interesting day. Started out with UCF Duke. This was Wednesday, December 28th. UCF Duke game. Duke kind of dominated. That's all it was. Shout out to my boy Tony Davis, who plays for Duke. He did enter the transfer portal though.
Duke had a great year.
Yeah, they did. They really did. Under the radar too. Mike Elko is doing great things at Duke. I cannot lie.
Year one.
Then this is arguably non-New Year's Six games. How about that? The best game. 3 overtime, Arkansas, Kansas, 55-53. I mean, they were just going back and forth with each other all game. Kansas with an 18-point fourth quarter to make the comeback. I actually had turned this game off because Arkansas was up so big. I was like, you know what? I'm turning on Oregon UNC. And then I get a tweet notification. I'm like, is Kansas somebody was like, now I see why Missouri didn't want to play Kansas in a bowl game or something like that. And I'm like, huh? So then I was like, huh? Because they're blowing them out, because Arkansas is blowing them out or something. And then I turned it back over real quick, and I see they're going into overtime. I'm like, what? And overtime was fire. It was a really good game. And then the other game that was going on, like I said, that started, about halfway through the third quarter of the Arkansas Kansas game, was this Oregon North Carolina game. Really good game. Oregon with the last minute comeback. Great throw by Bo Nix on the final play of the game. And then the doink field goal that actually ends up going in to win the game was crazy. And then last but not least is Texas Tech, Ole Miss. Texas Tech kind of dominated that game. I didn't really watch a whole bunch of it because they were just up big the whole time, really. Yeah. And like I said, that was, by the time they were up big, was by the time this Oregon North Carolina game ended. Then we'll move to Thursday, December 29th. This was another decently good day. Syracuse, Minnesota was a good game. They kind of went back and forth with each other. Minnesota ends up winning it in the end. Florida State, Oklahoma was a game I did not, unfortunately, get to watch because it was a game. But I was at the Hornets game that night, so I didn't get to watch it. But I honestly think Florida State potentially was going to blow Oklahoma out, but it ended up being I honestly am. I mean, I had a great time in the Hornet game. Shout out my boy for the free tickets, but I mean, it was a great game, and sucks that I kind of missed it. But and then Washington, Texas, I got to see about the back end of it. Really,
Washington dominated.
Did they?
Don't let that score fool you. Washington was up the whole game.
Washington's a good team. Washington, arguably preseason top 10 next year. And then Friday, started out with Maryland, NC State. Honestly, a bad game. I mean, it was low scoring, punt after punt after punt after punt. And neither quarterback looked good. I mean, Ben Finley was 22 for 48.
Ben Finley.
Dude, there was one play I specifically remember where it was 3rd and 6 or something like that, and they ran a little arrow route to the out to try to get the first down, and dude's wide open, and Ben Finley throws it into the ground 3 yards in front of him. I mean, it was bad. I don't know why MJ Morris wasn't playing. He must have been hurt or something, but NC State's got to get a quarterback. They got to get.
Of course, they're still ranked. Look.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, of course they're still ranked. Yeah, they won't be in a couple weeks though, right? Because the final one comes out after the national championship, right?
Yeah, they put an AP poll out after the national championship.
And then this game, fire game, honestly,
fantastic game.
South Carolina. Both of these they were kind of simultaneously going on the same time because this Pitt UCLA game was a CBS game. Notre Dame South Carolina was the ESPN game. South Carolina opened up early, and it kind of looked like South Carolina was going to dominate that game early, and then Notre Dame just stuck in it, grinded it out, came back, won the game. Pitt UCLA was interesting. Pitt wins off of a 50-yard field goal, I think it was, and the dude made 5 or 6 field goals on the day for Pitt. Crazy. Yeah. Ohio, Wyoming, didn't watch any of it. It was on Barstool. I wasn't going through the trouble to watch that, but did go to overtime, which was interesting. And then, unfortunately, I got to talk about this Tennessee-Clemson game. Tennessee dominated.
Let it out.
Tennessee dominated. That's all it was. Cade Klubnik looked good, but the problem was early in the game when we had chances to build momentum, we didn't capitalize because of BT Potter. Thank God BT Potter is going after this year.
Well, another problem is in a kid's first start, you don't want them throwing 54 times.
Yeah. And honestly, I just feel like I knew it was going to be a problem going into the game, but our secondary still just isn't good enough to compete with these teams that, air the ball out. And it showed in this game, Squirrel White. Oh my God, Squirrel White. That's a tough one to say. Down here, 9 receptions, 108 yards, a touchdown. If you look at his touchdown he had, he's wide open, 60 yards down the field. And there's just no excuse for that. If you're wide open 20, 30 yards down the field, okay, but 60 yards down the field, come on, man. Joe Milton, shout out to him. He's got a hell of an arm. But yeah, I just wasn't happy with our performance, honestly. But at the same time, it's a bowl game that didn't really mean anything at the end of the day.
Question, though, is everyone kind of thought with Tennessee losing all these guys that they just were kind of a one-year thing. Do you think that they could carry this into next year?
No, I think they could. I definitely think they could. Milton's coming back, right?
Yeah, he's back.
Is this guy coming back right here?
I'm pretty sure the team he's a sophomore.
He's really good. I think they have a good chance. I think they'll open up as a top 15 team next year.
Maybe top 10.
Yeah, maybe top 10. And then time will tell at that point, honestly.
Yeah.
Then we moved to December 31st, where we opened up with Alabama. At the beginning of this game, it looked like Kansas State was going to be in it and potentially win, but then Alabama kind of opened it up. Their defense started to step up. And Deuce Vaughn was a one-man army in that game. And then Iowa defense outscored their offense.
Two pick sixes
and 1 offensive touchdown, shut out Kentucky, who, to be fair to Kentucky, did not have Will Levis or Rodriguez. That's their 2 big guys. And, yeah, I mean, their quarterback that they had in there, maybe something right, or something like that. He was bad.
They don't have to worry about him next year, though.
He was really bad. Yeah, definitely. Then we'll move to TCU, Michigan. What a game, honestly. It got to a point where it looked like TCU was just going to take it and run with it. And then Michigan in that third quarter, I mean, it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think they scored 4 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes of the third quarter combined.
Yeah.
Crazy. JJ McCarthy, I mean, he looked pretty good. I can't lie. But this was the man I actually think that is not getting enough love is DeMercado, that running back from TCU. 17 carries for 150 and a touchdown in place of Kendre Miller, who went out early in the game with an injury. Max Duggan didn't look like Max Duggan is a game commander. I'll put it like that, right? And that's something I can talk about when we preview the national championship here in a couple minutes. But Max Duggan isn't going to put up crazy numbers, but he's still going to, win. It's awesome to see. I mean, he threw 2 picks. He had 15 incompletions. He only had 225 yards, and they still.
To be fair to his picks, though, they both hit the receivers.
Yeah. And Quentin Johnston, we've talked about him plenty of times now. 6 for 163 and a touchdown. He's going to the NFL. He's probably him and Jordan Addison, probably going to be the first receivers off the board this year. Ronnie Bell had a good game. Roman Wilson, we can say he had a good game. might have got a touchdown taken away from them that could have changed the game.
It just felt like in this game that, like, Michigan just multiple times got the momentum, and you were just like, okay, here it comes. TCU's losing it. And then every single time TCU made a play.
They responded every single time. Crazy. And then I'll let you talk about this next one since I've been talking. You go ahead.
Well, I was at the game, and it's probably the best game I've ever been to any sport. I mean, it's got a case for the best playoff game we've had. I wouldn't give it to it, but shout out to Ohio State. I really don't know how they could have played any better, honestly. Like they were physical on the line. They made plays through the passing game. But at the end of the day, I think the better team won. Georgia made more mistakes and had some guys go out with injury as well. I know Marvin Harrison went out, but we also had guys go out. And we found a way to win in the fourth quarter. You see 18-3 in the fourth quarter. That's where the game turned. Yeah. Stetson Bennett made plays.
Yeah, I mean we've said it plenty of times. Great teams find ways to win games. I about it. People watching don't know about it, so I'll explain it real quick. But we have a group chat with a bunch of our friends, a bunch of our club basketball teammates, and when Ohio State scored that field goal with how much time was it left? Like maybe like 3, 4. They kicked a field goal with 2 minutes and 43 seconds left. I knew it was over.
Oh yeah,
I knew it was over.
I thought we scored too fast, and we did score too fast.
And because I said it in that group chat, I said Georgia's built for this, and y'all went down the field and y'all scored.
I was sitting around a bunch of Georgia fans. We're down by 6, and I said, "We're about to find out what Stetson Bennett's made of."
And you did.
And we did. But
I want to give a shout out to CJ Stroud real quick because honestly, I do, like you said, shout out to Ohio State. I don't think they could have played any better either. I think they answered a lot of the questions that people were doubting them about, the physicality on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. CJ Stroud was getting doubted a lot, I feel like. And me personally, and this is a video I'm going to put out on my YouTube channel on here in a little bit, not a little bit, but within the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I think CJ Stroud is the best prospect going into the NFL as of right now, this year. I think he showed what he is about as a quarterback. I think one of the doubts that people had about CJ Stroud is how he can move in and out of the pocket with pressure, and y'all pressured him, a lot.
On me.
And I mean, he made play after play to get out of the pocket.
We couldn't sack him.
Yeah, I mean, I know he had 12 carries for 34 yards, but that's hard.
Counting sacks.
Yeah, that's hard in college because of the sack numbers. But that play that he made right there at the end of the game to get them into field goal range, which ultimately did not help them. But I mean, that play was crazy. That's one of the craziest plays I think I've seen in college in a little while.
I also think it answers questions about Ryan Day. People said that Ryan Day wasn't built for this. Ryan Day, this and that, about how he's not a very good coach. Yeah. Again, there was some play calls I'm sure he wants back, but how much better can you prepare for that game? I mean, They were right there to win it. You can honestly, a lot of people say they deserve to win. I won't go that far, but they played just as well as Georgia did, if not better.
Yeah.
Couldn't find a way to win.
And then we'll move on to the last day of bowl games. It was Monday, January 2nd, 4 days ago. Mississippi State with a wild game against Illinois. Shout out Mississippi State for coming back in the fourth quarter. RIP Mike Leach, getting a win for their coach, and scoring on the final play to cover the spread, which is interesting.
That was crazy.
And honestly, for a minute there on that final play, it looked like Illinois was really about to do something with it, ladder on the ball. Then we'll move real quick to the absolute train. You get it? Because Purdue's Boilermakers.
Yeah.
By LSU 63-7. I don't even need to talk about it because I turned it off at the second quarter. Tulane, Southern Cal. Shout out Tulane for coming back in the second half. I mean, that was an awesome end to a game. Caleb Williams did just about everything he could do. but so did Michael Pratt and Tajay Spears. Tajay
Let's
Spears.
call it like it is with USC. If they're going to be anything more than a New Year's Six team, they gotta have a defense.
No, I agree. And Tajay, shout out Tajay Spears, is very underrated running back. I figured out about him about week 8 or so. And that man just puts up numbers every week. 17 for 205 and 4 touchdowns. That's crazy. And also, here's a guy that I want to talk about real quick. I mean, kind of under the radar, not really talked about is Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, greatest NFL receiver of all time, potentially. 6 receptions for 174, 2 touchdowns. Honestly, didn't even know about him. I didn't even know about him until this game. I mean, he looked amazing. He is a junior. Didn't have stats this year, but keep on the lookout for him, I guess. He's really good.
I don't know if you've heard too about USC, but there's a rumor going around that Marvin Harrison Jr. might go there.
Good Lord. That'd be scary. And then Penn State kind of dominated this game against Utah. Interesting because Karen Rising, for the second year in a row, gets knocked out early in the Rose Bowl by an injury. Feel bad for Karen Rising, feel bad for Utah. I feel like that would have before Karen Rising went out, that game was so close. It was neck and neck. I thought it was going to be whoever had the ball last was going to win the game. But once Karen Rising went out, Utah could not move the ball. Their backup quarterback was making very bad throws, which no offense to him, but he's not put in that situation a lot. So yeah. And then that gets us to the national championship. That's on it's upcoming one day. It's down to 12.5 now. It opened at 13.5.
It's still 13. It depends on where you look. It's between 12.5 and 13.5.
I think this is gonna be one of those games where it's what can TCU's high-powered offense do against Georgia's great defense, You want a prediction or no?
I mean, it's hard to. I feel like what everybody's doing is what can TCU do to win? Like, what has to happen for TCU to win?
Yeah.
They've got to win the turnover battle.
I agree. I was gonna say you got to win the turnover battle, and that was a key against Michigan, and they did.
And Georgia turns the ball over.
Yeah.
They've got to be physical on the lines of scrimmage. They were against Michigan. Can they continue that against Georgia, who's probably more physical than Michigan?
Yeah.
I feel like you've got to establish the run against Georgia, which is nearly impossible to do. But the one thing that Georgia does struggle to do is contain elite receivers, and they have one of those.
Yeah.
I don't think that Georgia can just walk into this game and win. I think that Georgia's going to have to play. But if you're asking me for if my life's on the line, what would I predict? I would take Georgia to win and cover the 12.5.
I am taking. I've already picked Georgia to win. But I do think TCU will cover the spread. Just because it's the national championship. I know that sounds dumb, but that's the top bill. I feel like they're not a team that's going to lay down. I feel like they're a team that's going to battle into the fourth quarter at least. And not necessarily maybe keep it close, but stay somewhat in the game. I'll put it like that. I do think Georgia will win. I think Georgia outnumbers them talent-wise in positional battles. And also at the coaching helm on both sides.
Part of me, like, if I wasn't a Georgia fan, I would definitely be rooting for TCU, and it sucks that I've got to root against them because it's really cool that they made it this far.
Yeah,
but I just don't think they can hang with Georgia.
Yeah, I do think that, like I said, I think they cover. I'm gonna go. If I had to go score prediction as of right now, I like 38. I feel like every time I predict a Georgia game, I always have y'all scoring 38 points. I don't know why.
See, I think our offense won't have any trouble.
I'm going to go 41-31. That's what I like. 41-31.
I'm gonna say 45-21. Georgia.
All right, let's look at this. Let's talk about this real quick. We'll talk about this for 5 to 7 minutes. How about that? So transfer portal. This is 24/7's transfer portal. I just went to the top ranked guys. So we'll do it like that, I guess. I'm gonna move our cameras up here a little bit. So the first guy we have on here is Travis Hunter. Everybody knows who Travis Hunter is. Everybody knows about Travis Hunter. Guy can play both sides of the ball.
And Colorado.
Yeah, and that was obvious. Deion Sanders. Same thing with Shador. If Shador comes up here, we don't even really need to talk about it. A lot of any of these Jackson State guys, essentially, you're going to see went to Colorado, except for the receiver Coleman. He went to Louisville.
Yep.
I think he is a pretty good player. I actually don't know about this guy right here. Ernest Hausman.
Yeah.
Went from Nebraska to Michigan. I haven't heard a lot about him actually.
Michigan defense will stay good. You know that, especially with Harbaugh saying he's going to stay.
Yeah. Denver Harris is a cornerback. Went from Texas A&M to LSU. Another guy I actually don't know about.
He was a part of that big recruiting class last season with A&M, one of the top guys.
And speaking of cornerbacks in A&M, we saw, just in case we don't get to him, Tony Grimes leaving UNC to go to A&M was a bit of surprise to me. I thought he was going to go to the NFL this year, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big surprise to me. Here's a guy I know a little bit about, Ventrell Cypress, out of Virginia's cornerback. He went to Florida State. A little bit upsetting for me that he stayed in the ACC because it's somebody that I think Clemson could have really used if we went into the transfer portal. And I think he's from South Carolina, if I'm correct, which would have made it even better. Yeah, he's from Rock Hill, South Carolina. So about an hour away from Clemson.
Florida State got a couple of good transfers. They also picked up the tight end from South Carolina.
Jaheim Bell, yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Have a good year next year.
Yeah. Then this is somebody that we mentioned a little bit, Sam Hartman, going to Notre Dame. This is interesting for me because Sam Hartman has put up all these numbers these past couple of years at Wake Forest.
Right.
And so now he goes into a bigger culture, a bigger program with better players. Got to see what he's going to do. I think, honestly, he's a guy that could have NFL potential after next year.
He's got to have a good year, though.
But, yeah. Devin Leary's another guy leaving NC State, going to Kentucky. I've said it multiple times before, and I feel like bad because I feel like I'm always hating on NC State players and NC State guys, but Devin Leary still, to this day, just hasn't really shown me a whole lot. I know he beat us last year, but I mean, he gets a lot of hype, and I don't see it. I'll put it straight up like that. Now, he can prove me wrong, but
is he better than Will Levis was this year?
So here's my thing about Will Levis. Will Levis had no weapons at all. At all. Their receivers suck. Their O-line, not that good. And they had Chris Rodriguez. And that was it. I felt really bad for Will Levis. I think if you put Will Levis in other systems in the country, Will Levis is going to be the number one pick in the draft.
So you think Leary's worse?
I think Leary and Will Levis. I do think Leary is worse, but I think you'll see a similar season that Will Levis had this year from Devin Leary, probably.
Okay.
How about that?
There's people thinking that this is an improvement for Kentucky, and I don't think that.
Will Levis has all the intangibles to be an NFL quarterback. He's a prototypical NFL quarterback. And I don't think that's something I can get into in a mock draft video later, but yeah, I think Will Levis is getting a lot of hate that he shouldn't. Here's a guy. You want to talk about him real quick since he went to Georgia?
Well, people say that Georgia's only downfall in recruiting is getting elite wide receivers, and Dominic Lovett fits the build of an elite wide receiver.
Yeah.
He comes from Missouri. Georgia had a tough game against Missouri this year, and a lot of it was because of this guy.
Yeah.
And we got him, and we got another receiver. If you'll see him on here, Ra Thomas from Mississippi State.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to be dangerous next year. Make it easier on our new starting quarterback next year, whoever wins the job.
And I could be wrong, but I honestly think Ra Thomas is better than Dominic Lovett.
It's just hard to say because Ra Thomas was in such a pass-heavy system. But we'll see how they're used.
Then here's a guy we briefly just mentioned, Jaheim Bell, really good tight end out of South Carolina, goes to Florida State. And if you see over here on the right side, top 10 football transfer rankings right now, Florida State is actually above Colorado, surprisingly. LSU third, Michigan fourth. Arizona State, interesting school right there at 5. Southern Cal is at 6, UCLA at 7, Oklahoma State at 8, SMU sneaking in there at 9, and Washington at 10. So you see teams that have had a great year after maybe not a great year last year, like Washington, like Southern Cal, and like Florida State, that are getting these guys to potentially improve and keep improving on their I don't really know what the word would be, but they keep improving on their seasons,
Yeah.
Javion Cohen, as I'm going to assume is how you say that, from Alabama to Miami.
He was a starter.
Yeah, very interesting. You don't really see a lot of guys transfer out of Alabama unless they don't play. And like you said, he was a starter on the offensive line. I think he's from Florida, maybe. No, he's from Alabama. Okay, that makes it even interesting then. Yeah, very interesting move. But he is an offensive lineman, so it's kind of like, how much does that really affect? Also, Miami they've been disappointed the past couple of years. But
they had a fantastic recruiting class this year. They're starting to create a little bit of momentum, but yeah. I really it's hard for me to predict them proving on the field until I see it.
I agree. And then here's an interesting guy that I didn't think would be in the top 10 in these rankings is Hudson Card. He hasn't done anything. He didn't do anything at Texas.
No.
Now he's going to Purdue.
Is he as good as Aiden McConnell? O'Connell? I don't think so.
Maybe.
I don't think so.
Could be, potentially. I don't know. Dasan, as soon as I say it, McCullough, an edge out of Indiana, going to Oklahoma, joining that Brent Venables defensive team.
That
not a guy I know a lot about. A lot of these guys at this point, unless they're quarterbacks or wide receivers or running backs, I'm really not going to know a lot about. Jahad Carter's safety out of Syracuse, going to Ohio State. Interesting. Stop me if you want to talk about any of these guys, but defensive lineman out of Western Michigan. First kind of like, small school we've seen here.
Yep.
Going to Florida State again. Then we had a guy at Arizona State, go to Michigan.
That's another one. Is that Sanford? Southern Louisiana.
Southeastern Louisiana, yeah. Going to LSU. Robert Thomas, who we briefly mentioned. This is a guy I want to talk about real quick, is Johnny Cornelius. This was like one of the first guys that entered the portal. He was getting a ton of hype.
Yeah.
He's an offensive tackle out of Rhode Island. He's going to Oregon. Could potentially improve that offensive line.
Another guy, if you go back up, with Dorian Singer, he was the leading receiver in the Pac-12 this year, and you put him on the same team as Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
They've got a lot coming back on offense.
They do.
Did you see they also picked up Marshawn Lloyd today from South Carolina?
Yeah, I did see that.
There was another one, I think. There's Shedder Sanders. Eric All.
Eric All, yeah.
A little bit from the tight end.
Yep. I went past him, Michigan, going to Iowa.
Joining Cade McNamara.
And Iowa's a known place to produce NFL tight ends.
Yep.
And then here's one I wanted to talk about is Ali Jennings. I think I could be wrong, but he was high, like in the nation, leading in receiving yards towards the beginning of this year. I'm not really sure how he finished though. Go like this. Yeah, here we go. Not sure if he was the leading receiver in the Sun Belt. 54 receptions for 959 yards and 9 touchdowns out of Old Dominion. Going to Virginia Tech though. So kind of an L. No offense. And then real quick, last thing I want to talk about, I want to just do it like this. I want to talk about some quarterbacks that we haven't talked about yet. Not really gonna talk about Kent State, UCLA because I don't really know.
He's a bridge guy.
Yeah, DJ, obviously, everybody knows the story about DJ going to Oregon State. Very interesting. Brennan Armstrong, I didn't see this. Crystal ball to NC State.
That would be a fantastic pickup for NC State. He's a good player.
Luke Altmaier to Illinois.
I'd bet on him winning that job. Altmaier's pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jeff Simpson, Nebraska is interesting also. Is this Blaine Gabbard's brother?
I bet it is.
Nick Evers going to Wisconsin probably will be the starter.
No, they got Tanner Mordecai.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. I did forget about that. Keaton Slovis to BYU is like what? I mean, he just keeps going everywhere. It's like JT Daniels, who went to Rice. Obviously,
Sanders still uncommitted.
That'll be interesting. Drew Pine to Arizona State's interesting. And here's a guy I just talked about, Graham Mertz to Florida.
Florida. Well, I don't even know why you would offer that guy.
I don't know if that'll help him or what, but we'll see. Jack Plummer to Louisville, Haynes King, Georgia Tech. I mean, there's so many guys. Emory Jones to Cincinnati, JT Daniels to Rice, all that. But yeah, that's really all I got.
Yep.
Marshawn Lloyd, yeah.
There'll be more guys enter the portal, I'm sure, after spring and after Georgia and TCU are done.
Yeah. But yeah. So not really sure on the schedule of what we'll put out. We'll probably try to put out an episode next week after the national championship. But yeah, we appreciate y'all watching and all the support. And again, sorry for the unannounced break, but we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Peace.
Peace.